Good afternoon. My name is Tim Lynch. I am your host of Legal Lines. Legal Lines is brought to you by the Massachusetts LGBTQ Bar Association. Our guest here today is Deb Silva of the Massachusetts Equal Justice Coalition, and she's going to talk about what great work they do. If you'd like to call in, please do. Our number here is 617-708-3290. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. So the Equal Justice Coalition, how long have you guys been around and what do you do?
So the coalition was formed in 1999. We're a collaboration of the Boston Bar Association, the Mass Bar Association, and the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation. And what we do is to advocate for state funding for civil legal aid. In a nutshell, civil legal aid is free legal services that are provided by programs throughout the state for low-income people in civil legal matters, which is different from criminal.
So let's go into that a little bit, because I was just at a meeting where the Justice Gantz of the Supreme Judicial Court was telling us about a survey where there was you had many litigants in the court system who have no representation, and it's very sad. Mm-hmm. So I take it you guys are trying to address this. We
are, and Justice Gantz is a really strong supporter of civil legal aid, and we really appreciate that support.
Yeah, he's wonderful. So when you say civil litigation, what kind of cases are we talking about?
Yeah, so, a lot of, as I was saying, this isn't criminal. A lot of people understand from TV and the movies that when a poor defendant can't afford an attorney, they have a constitutional right to have an attorney, and if they can't afford one will be provided to them free of charge. That's not the case in the civil context, and by civil we mean really many life-changing matters such as divorce, child custody, eviction, or for handling a foreclosure situation. Denial of benefits is another area that a lot of our attorneys work in. So if somebody's been denied unemployment insurance, for instance, or unemployment compensation, I should say, or Medicaid or some other kind of government benefit and can't afford to have an attorney represent them in the appeal process, civil legal aid can represent them for free.
And these are life-altering issues. You're talking about people losing their home.
Exactly.
And people getting a divorce.
Or potentially losing custody of their children. Yeah, I mean, these are definitely serious matters, and they're very complicated matters. And so if somebody tries to go in and represent themselves, they're really at a disadvantage.
I should say, I don't know how somebody would even begin to represent themselves in these cases. It's very sad.
Yeah, yeah.
So you guys get involved. How does somebody know to seek you out? So
in order to be eligible for civil legal aid, you have to have an income below a certain level. It's 125% of the federal poverty level, actually, which comes out to about $573 a week for a family of four, which is close to $30,000 a year for a family of four. And it's a good question about how they know to seek us out. We're doing our best to get the word out there. And often they'll be referred, a potential client will be referred to legal aid by a social services agency in their area. We have offices throughout the state. And there's also, which I didn't bring with me, but there's a hotline that they can call as well. They can call the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation, which is one of the groups that we that belong, that is part of our coalition.
So I have your phone number is 617-391-5633.
That's my direct line, and absolutely people should feel free to call me as well, and I can direct them to the right resources.
That's good. How big are you?
So the Equal Justice Coalition itself, as I said, I'm the entire staff.
Oh, really?
I have one assistant, I should say, a part-time assistant who's indispensable. But the coalition itself, as I said, is made up of the Legal Assistance Corporation, which is the agency that actually funds the programs throughout the state that provide legal services, as well as the two largest bar associations, the Boston Bar Association and the Mass Bar Association. But we have lots of support from other lawyers throughout the state. And our biggest event of the year, actually, our lobbying day at the State House, is called Walk to the Hill, and that happens in January of every year. And this year we had over 500, close to 600 attorneys attend that event. And they come and they hear speakers, including a client every year who talks about how important civil legal aid was in his or her life. This year it was a woman. And then they go out and they meet with their legislators and advocate for increased state funding. And again, that's our mission, is to try to provide funding to these programs.
So basically it's you and a very able assistant, and I take it you get a bunch of attorneys who work for free.
So the way it works, I mean, the way it works is the coalition, and myself and my assistant, we provide sort of the infrastructure and the support for the legal community. And we coordinate the advocacy efforts throughout the year. So we might send out an e-alert, or we might ask people to call their legislator and ask them to sign on to a letter to the speaker, say, advocating for increased funding.
But the people who do the legal work,
so the people who do the legal work, those are separate organizations from the Equal Justice Coalition.
Okay, you hook them, you basically place the indigent party, the person who needs legal assistance, with the appropriate legal agency?
So that's not with that's with MLAC, the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation helps do that, and there are, as I mentioned, other hotlines throughout the state. The bar associations help refer people to those programs. But what we do is we run the legislative budget campaign.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
which is why Walk to the Hill is critical.
Exactly.
It's critical. I know I'm very active in the Bar Association. I know that's for both the Massachusetts LGBTQ bar as well as the Mass Bar Association. Those are very critical, as it is with Boston Bar Association.
Yes, yeah.
So basically you rely upon state funding?
Civil legal aid is funded in Massachusetts is funded primarily through two sources. State funding is one, and the other is interest on lawyers' trust accounts, the IOLTA accounts.
The infamous IOLTA account.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, I'm a personal injury lawyer.
Yeah, so you're familiar.
I'm very familiar with IOLTA, and just as a way of explanation, whenever a case is settled, lawyers get in the settlement check. They have to then disperse that money to the injured client, to whatever medical caregiver who has a lien on the file, attorney's fees, and then expenses. So that money stays in an account, and it's called IOLTA.
Right.
And IOLTA, and no interest is earned on that account for the account per se, but the interest that is earned goes to the IOLTA fund, which funds you guys.
Exactly,
Awesome.
exactly. And the problem, though, is that with the recent decline, the recent economic decline, that interest rates have gotten so low, and also in some cases, particularly in the area of real estate, activity has slowed down as well, so that the funding for legal aid has really dropped dramatically from that source.
Oh, so you get funding also from people who put real estate money in escrow, any type of escrow
Exactly,
thing, legal
exactly.
escrow. So it's a brilliant idea to raise money.
And it worked really well for a really long time.
When there was high interest rates
Right.
and a lot of business generated. Wow. So you've been hurt very badly in funding.
So the programs have really suffered. They've had to lay off about a third of their attorneys. And this is, of course, even as, eligible clients, the pool of eligible clients has grown because of the economic downturn. So it's like right when we needed, to be providing the most services was when, unfortunately, we were hit with the biggest cuts.
Sure. I mean, tough economic times put stress on the household.
Right.
So sadly, there might be more divorces.
Yep.
Tough economic times, more people are eligible for government assistance and probably aren't getting it and need the assistance of a lawyer.
That's exactly right.
So it's a very sad situation when you have fewer funds and greater need.
Right, and so exactly. So my job has been over the last couple of years is to try to get the state to increase their funding to make up some of the difference, some of the losses that we've seen from IOLTA. And we've been fortunate. The governor's very supportive, and there are many legislators who are very supportive. But of course, there are lots of worthy programs who have also been cut and are looking for increased funding. So we have our work cut out for us, and having events like Walk to the Hill where we can show the broad support of the legal community really does help.
You've been watching Legal Lines. Legal Lines is brought to you by the Massachusetts LGBTQ Bar Association. Please, if you have a question, please call in regarding this very interesting subject regarding the funding for attorneys for people who simply cannot afford an attorney. Our number here is 617-708-3290. So, the Walk to the Hill is an annual event. I understand that, and I've had the pleasure of participating in it on behalf of the LGBTQ Bar Association, because this affects all of us.
That's right.
And it's inspiring. You go in, you have speakers, and then everybody meets with the state legislature and explains the situation.
That's right. That's right. We're really fortunate that many of the bar associations across the state have been supportive. This year we had 45 different bar associations co-sponsor the event and bring their members in. So we really appreciate that. But the fight for funding for legal aid doesn't end, when people leave the State House at the end of the day for Walk to the Hill. It continues really all year long, but especially through the budget. The House and the Senate continue to deliberate on the budget through the end of June.
Yeah.
So
it's a long process.
It is a long process.
Wow. And what do you bring forth any statistics or anything like that as to how great the need is and what's going on? So
as I was saying, because of the economic decline, we now have 1 million residents in Massachusetts who are living under that
poverty
level and are eligible for civil legal services. And it's estimated that each of those has at least one legal need a year. And unfortunately, because of the cuts that legal aid has received, the local programs are forced to turn away half of the people who come to them looking for help right now.
Oh, gosh. So these are people who are losing their home because of a mortgage foreclosure or because their landlord's evicting them.
Exactly.
And those are very time-sensitive issues. You need help right away.
Exactly.
And they're being turned away. What can people do to help?
Well, again, the legislature is currently considering its budget for the next fiscal year, and as many folks as we can get to call their legislators and let them know that this is something that's important to them, and that funding for civil legal aid is a priority, and that they'd like their legislator to make it a priority. That's hugely helpful, because as I said, we have a lot of good support, but there are a lot of other organizations who are also, looking for funding, and we need to let them know that this is something, as you said, that affects really the whole community.
Gosh, it affects somebody's very life. I mean, my goodness, you lose your home, you lose everything.
Exactly, and it's the last resort for people. Civil legal aid, they turn to civil legal aid when there's nowhere else to go, really, for help.
And there's 1 million people out there.
Yeah.
Who are in desperate straits, who need this help.
That's right.
Wow. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to just?
I think that covers it. We really appreciate the public's support, as I said, and this really is an issue of fairness, and it goes to the integrity of the justice system, and so as you mentioned, it's something that. It doesn't just affect that 1 million people, although of course it affects them the most strongly, but it really affects everyone. It also, if we have people trying to represent themselves in court, that slows things down for everyone and creates more costs.
Well, it's an interesting point you make, because when people do try to represent themselves, and sadly they don't understand the system. A lot of the system was created, the rules were created on the basis of experience, not necessarily logic.
Right.
So when people come in and represent themselves, there is a cost to the system of delay.
That's exactly
and of of taxing the system's time and everything like that. So in many ways, what you're doing is saving money.
That's right. And another way that we save money actually is that when legal aid attorneys represent clients, they can often